Hi guys, my name is Leif Wallace, and on this video, I'm going to give you the exact tips that I use to be able to leverage AI to be able to get much better designs using artificial intelligence. But the way we're going to do that is we're going to look at Claude's actual system prompt for their 4.5 release this September. And we're going to see in their prompt what we can learn from it and how it can teach us how to be much better designers. You see, this is the exact system prompt that the Claude team is using, and you can basically go through their system prompt and see as much as possible what you can learn from it to be able to be a better designer. So what I've done is I've basically broken down for you in my video, in my specific screenshot here. Let me just bring it over. In this screenshot, how you can actually be using Claude's system and how it actually breaks down. I want to simply show you how it works, and then at the end of it, I'm going to show you this specific design that I'm able to generate using AI and how you can get way better looking designs coming from AI just to get you going to be able to put into Figma for ideas, or even take it from Claude, bring it into Cursor, and then start building out a full website if you wanted to as well. Personally, I like to use Webflow, but we'll use that for another conversation. So let's just break it down so it makes sense to you as we go through it here today. So you see, when you're using Claude to process your requests, as I simply analyzed their system prompt, there was so much in here that can give us some key context of how their actual system works. And let's go through it now so you can see. Whenever you're making a request and that request is received, Claude is basically trying to see, does it know this specific command that you're making really well? If it knows it really well, it will answer it directly. If it doesn't know it really well, it will go down a search decision tree to understand more information, going online, searching their database, etc., to get more insight. And if you've connected any MCPs in place, sometimes it can, if you tell it to use your MCPs, such as Playwright or Puppeteer, if you want to know more information about this, let me know in the comments and I can break that down to you as well. So are there any known terms or entities that Claude doesn't know? If yes, it will do a single search tool from a single call, and then it will give you a response. If not, it will go into this kind of what info is changing, how is it changing, how is it relevant to us. Then it can even use web and go even deeper. You're giving you a simple search query response, or go researching and using more tools to be able to give you a response as well. And as a result, this is where Claude can sometimes compare sources, validate insights, and really systemize those things that are coming through as well. This is kind of a high level 30-foot view of how Claude actually works. Then we want to go into one of the key things Claude creates is artifacts. They're really valuable, especially if you want to copy something out of Claude. Sometimes if you're using ChatGPT calls this canvas. So, but I like using Claude specifically because I'm a designer, so I'm in the tool almost every day. So think about this. You make a request inside of the chat feature. It gives you some kind of output, code output. It really is trying to see, is it substantial? 20 lines or more. If it's less than 20 lines or more, if it's less than 20 lines, it might give you a response directly in chat. So you can see here, nope, keep it in chat, keep it in line. If it's more than 1500 or it's quite an extensive piece of code that it needs to develop, it goes on this path where it's highly likely you're going to copy it out. You might be saving a HTML or TSX or MD file. So you might want to take that, bring it outside of Claude, and then it will create an artifact for you where it pops up that kind of separate window inside of Claude because it knows it needs to give you more information. So some key things from the system prompt that I gathered is that it's going to use well-known established architecture or frameworks, I should say. React components, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for landing pages, React for UI or interactive features, SVGs for any graphics or icons, Mermaid for diagrams and flows, Python and JS, etc. for code, and any markdown for documentation that you might want to pull into Cursor or Lovable if you're trying to build out something for yourself. But it does apply some restrictions to the code it gives you. So it's only using Tailwind's core classes. This is why many times I've seen designers say, I've asked Claude to create a SAS page for me and it doesn't really work, or it didn't really look that great. It's because it's got some restrictions on it on what it can actually use. And I'm going to show you the reason why, because there was a $1 billion plus lawsuit given against Claude. I'm going to show you why that applies to our conversation. It will use React state, no local storage. It will import from allowed libraries only, making it functional and interactive, and there will be no placeholder content as well. Sometimes it will use dummy content but it's not taking it from somewhere else to put it into here because it could get copyright infringement as well. So this is specifically as designers, we've got to be mindful. Okay, if we want Claude to copy something out, we can instruct it, create an artifact for me, but naturally it's going to create an artifact for me. So we have to think, okay, this is going to be interesting for me. I generally don't want something in code. I'm going to copy it out. So I know I need it to create an artifact. So how does the design philosophy decision matrix break down? So depending upon the type of project that you've told Claude that you want to create, it will then go down these kind of routes of, are you creating some kind of an application, or is it a landing page or marketing site or something simple that you're creating? So as a result, there was an actual prompt or excerpt that I gathered from the system prompt. And you can see here, if I just go to landing pages, one of the key things you can see here from Claude's landing page prompt from the system prompt, or the landing page section from the system prompt, is it says, consider the emotional impact and the wow factor of the design. So if you want something that's not always wow, you might want something that's very specific, or you might want to create a feature that is quite safe and structured within your user interface. Sometimes Claude can over-engineer some of your ideas. So it's not always good to just rely on AI to just produce designs for you. Because of the type of work that you're doing as a product designer, you might be working on a health application or some kind of a government-based application, B2B application. And sometimes the ideas are good. And most of the time, I've found personally, the ideas are over-engineered. So you've got to really stay in, this is good for ideation, but don't just copy what you get always, because it's like you might end up with a Frankenstein application just because AI is giving it to you. Plus, AI is making calculations every time it's giving you a response. It's not like a human being that's really creatively thinking through and solving those design problems, right? So it can actually make mistakes at least 10 to 15% of the time. I'll do another video on AI mistakes and designers, how we have to think about how we avoid those. So let me go back to this decision tree so you're super clear. So we know we've instructed it what we're going to make. So it's either an app or it's a website. Depending upon which way you're going, there's some priorities in the system code that it's going to basically prioritize. If you're making an application, it's going to prioritize functionality, performance, user experience, smooth frame rates, stable, bug-free, and simple designs. That's why if you've ever created some kind of application inside of Claude Chat, you can find that it will actually say to you that there's a bug or there's an error, or it will pop up a console so you can see the actual issues, and it will, because it's prioritized that in its system code. If you look at landing pages, for example, it's prioritizing the wow factor, bold and unexpected, emotional impact, stop scrolling design, modern aesthetics, dynamic / alive feeling. Many times when I've done this using Claude, you don't really tend to see it giving you images, because that's not something that's been prioritized in the system prompt. It's mainly around the aesthetics of the colors, the fonts, the styles, the size of fonts, etc., of how things look. Another thing to consider is that it's been inside a system prompt, it's going to prioritize things like vibrant colors, dynamic layout, bold typography, micro animations, 3D elements, gradients. So if this is not what you're looking for, it may not be always good to like think of Claude as your be all and end all, but it's a great way to start ideating to get you on to the pathway of designing much faster. But you've really got to think about how you prompt and what instructions you give. I'm gonna give you an example of that further down. So one of the key things to be mindful of is that AI firm Anthropic agreed to settle a pay authors $1.5 billion lawsuit to settle piracy lawsuit. So it says here, the lawsuit was filed against Anthropic last year by bestselling mystery thriller author Andrea Bartz, whose novels were We Were Never Here, along with The Good Nurse and Charles Graeber's The Feather Thief author, Kirk Wallace Johnson. They accused the company of stealing their work to train Claude's AI chatbot in order to build a multi-billion-dollar business. The company holds more than 7 million pirated books in central libraries, according to Judge Asperger's June decision, and faced up to $150,000 in damages per copyrighted work. So this is a massive thing. So basically, inside the system prompt, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I did read where copyright, always respect copyright. So like there's a big thing around copyright now and how they think about it. So it will frame how you start to ask Claude questions. It's not just going to spit out to you something that looks like something else, but it can be inspired by or take references from other designs. So you can mention things like Linear or Stripe or Asana, very well-known big applications to help inform how good your design can look and get inspired by. So some key things to consider. There's like, because of this copyright restrictions, you know, it's never going to reproduce any copyrighted material. It never quote or reproduce exact text from search results. It will never reproduce or quote song lyrics in any form. And so regardless of what users say, it never produce copyrighted material under any conditions. These are exact excerpts that are coming from the system prompt. So for you as a designer, you're not going to be able to copy some competitor verbatim. You must rephrase or paraphrase research articles. Cannot always produce brand guidelines from other websites, and must create like original interpretations of something that exists. So you can copy like existing websites into your design, but it's going to be hard to just go into a website's console or panel and copy something out and just reproduce it exactly. You're not always going to get that with Claude. From a design philosophy, the wow factor is a big part of their system prompt. So direct quotes are things said here like, consider the emotional impact and wow factor of design. Ask yourself, would someone stop scrolling and say, whoa, is this always what? And then as designers, we've got to think, is this always what we're looking for when we're using Claude? When faced with design decisions, lean towards bold and unexpected rather than safe and conventional. So we've got to be mindful as designers, what is it that we're looking for, right? Default to contemporary design trends and modern aesthetic choices. Static designs should be the exception, not the rule. Include thoughtful animations, hover effects, interactive elements, and make the interface feel responsive and alive. So what does this mean for us as designers? So if we're creating any complex applications, there's going to be certain frameworks they're going to stick to. Smooth frameworks, clearly intuitive user interfaces, stable bug-free interactions. This is now how it's going to be thinking about how it gives you its response. So what this means for us as designers, expect bold, modern designs by default. So you're always going to get this kind of bolder UI as a result of the system prompt request. Also, if you want something safe and conventional, you've got to request it. So be explicit. Claude biases towards visual impact for marketing. Claude biases towards performance for applications. So that's something you just got to consider, especially when you're using this as a designer, all right? So let's think about the artifact system, the way that it pops out that artifact so you can get more. You must always use artifacts for writing custom code to solve specific user problem, content intended for eventual use outside of the conversation, creative writing of any length, structured content that uses references, and modifying / iterating on content that already exists in an existing artifact. So you can see these are the reasons why Claude will create an artifact for you. So always, see, it's got these key libraries. That's not really anything you need to worry about. But the main thing for us as designers, always get working prototypes, not just descriptions, right? It's going to be really essential for us to think about that as well. Can build interactive demos, which can be super valuable for us as a designer if we want something to really like work through this user journey for me. Here are the states, break down the states, the user journey, and then you can walk Claude through how you want that journey to function, and then it can actually build out a simple prototype for you or simple steps of a feature. Limited to the specific libraries that you see above, but it's definitely great as well for like design system components that you want to add to an existing design, or there's a certain feature of a full UI that you want to focus on and highlight, and you want Claude to just build that specific feature for you and give you some ideas. Super valuable, great way to use Claude for stuff like that. But when you're just talking about full UIs, it's not always the best, but you can get some good starting points from it as well. This is more around like how it has critical restrictions based inside of the system prompt. So from these quotes from the system prompt, you can see here, it's like use local storage or any browser specific APIs in the artifact. So these APIs are not supported and will cause artifacts to fail if in the Claude AI environment. So I was trying to think, what could this actually mean for us as designers? So what it means for us as designers is that prototypes don't always persist and data between different refreshes, meaning that if you're in the Claude chat and you're having a conversation, that original prototype you have can get overridden by existing conversations you're having in the same chat, basically. So you might have one prototype that was made in one chat session, and then it's still in the same chat, but then it's just going to override it over and over again. React becomes a default, Tailwind only, so there's not any custom CSS you can just apply inside of chat. So plan for session only data storage. In other words, in that specific chat you're going to have, that's where your prototype will be. So what I found, if I like the prototype that has been created as a default, I can save the HTML or TSX file, bring it into Cursor, and then from Cursor, I can then go and make any additional changes to that as well. And Cursor has been powerful to be able to take ideas that Claude starts with and then really push it even further. Tone and behavior, right? So Claude never starts its response by saying a question or an idea, or an observation was good, great, fascinating, proud, profound, excellent, or any other positive adjectives. It skips the flattery and responds to you directly. So Claude critically evaluates any theories, claims, and ideas presented to it rather than automatically agreeing or paraphrasing. When presented with dubious, incorrect, ambiguous, or unverified theories, claims, or ideas, Claude respectfully points out the flaws, factual errors, or lack of evidence, or lack of clarity, rather than validating them. So sometimes when you're having the conversation in Claude, you can be very critical as a designer and say, hey, Claude, I feel like you're biased over here, or I don't think you're correct over there. So you need to direct it in the way that you want it to go. Don't always just default to the answer or the response that it gives. So expect honest critique. Well, honest. Like, guys, take this with a pinch of salt, right? When I say honest, I mean, like, just expect it to give you, based upon what it's trained upon, its version of honest critique, right? Not validation. Claude will challenge weak design rationale. If you don't think it's weak, then you can also challenge back. Won't automatically praise your idea, which is a good thing. So it's not going to default to, oh, this is great, and better feedback, but less ego stroking. So, you know, the more explicit you can tell Claude, when you're giving me a response, be as explicit as possible. Do not just default to what I give you, Claude. Be direct and straight to the point in the responses you're giving me. So as a designer, prompt Claude to be very, very clear with you so you know how to move forward and make changes as a designer, all right? Another key thing as well is, what's this? So this was Claudeception. So build how you can build tools inside of Claude. So you can see some direct quotes here called Claudeception. The capability may be referred to user as Claude in Claude. So when using artifacts and the analysis tool, you have access to Anthropic API via Fetch. This lets you send completion requests to Claude's API. This is a powerful capability that lets you orchestrate Claude's completion requests via code. And this capability may be referred to as Claude in Claude or Claudeception. So what does it mean for us as designers? It means you can build AI-powered design tools, you can create an automated critique system, and you can build design assistants with Claude and generate multiple variations programmatically. So one thing that's great is that for those of you who haven't tried it, please try it. It's called Claude Code. You can implement that inside of your terminal with Cursor, and then you can take Claude and it can be an assistant to help you take your designs even further inside of Claude or any of those kind of IDEs, VS Code or anything like that. All right. And then let's talk about search behavior. So never search for queries about timeless info, fundamental concepts, or general knowledge. This is another quote directly from the system prompt that Claude can answer without searching. This category includes info with slow or no rate of change, fundamental explanations, definitions, theories, well-established technical knowledge. So it's going to always search for queries about current, latest, recent information or rapidly changing topics, daily/monthly updates like prices or news, and search immediately. So what does it mean for us as designers? For design principles, there's not going to be any search needed because it's going to look at anything that's relevant and it's going to bring that in by default. Any current trends, it will do that automatically. Competitor analysis, it will just have default research to do some competitor analysis, but you can also provide other competitors, oh, look at companies like X, Y, and Z as a result. And in best practice, it will just answer from its training. In other words, whatever it's been trained on, it's going to give you a response on that. So you might say, oh, don't forget to use material design. it should already be integrated into Claude's training by default, but that's what I mean. Like, you might give it an additional library, Untitled, ShadCN, etc., to be able to be trained on when you're giving some responses as well. So let me just break this down for you on a practical level, like some actual practical tips that you can use as a designer. So instead of just like create a button component, it could be create a button component or button system component with primary, secondary, tertiary views, loading states, icon support, hover and focus, mobile responsive, accessibility features, make it bold and modern and not safe. Or you can make it safe and conventional, not bold, for example. So if you notice, what I'm doing is, yes, I want a button component, but I want you to give me these variants of the button component, these states of the button component, this accessibility piece you need to be mindful of with this button component. So you can just be a bit more explicit. And as a designer, you now know what Claude is going to give to you will be much more closer to what you actually need, that is functional and that you can actually use. Override default behavior. So create a dashboard, but prioritize safe, conventional design, for example, because we know that Claude is going to by default go to the marketing side of things where it needs to be more bold, more impactful, more in your face. So by prioritizing safe and conventional, you're overriding the default inside of the actual source code. So if you go back to the source code, if I go Control F, if I type in bold, you can see that there's many places bold is used, but you can see here where things like here, Claude overly formatting responds with elements like bold emphasis on headers, for example. You could see here where it's got the wow factor, all right? Let me see if I can put it out. Here we go. And here we've got the wow factor of design. So that's that kind of bold idea that they've implemented inside of their system prompt to make sure everything's more bold and impactful. Here we go. Request honest feedback. Critique this design approach honestly, right? Point out weaknesses and accessibility issues and UX problems. Look at this. Don't soften the feedback. Yeah. So because we know that inside of Claude's responses, and I got some quotes that I showed you earlier. Where did I show you? Here we go. For tone and behavior, Claude never starts this response by saying a question or idea or observation is good, right? It skips the flattery and responds directly. So because that's in the system prompt, you now know when you want Claude to give you some feedback to your designs, you can re-emphasize that. And then Claude already has that in its system prompt, so you can get a better response as a designer when you're using Claude. So for those of you who want this, I've created like basically a dummy prompt structure based upon what I've found out from the system prompt, that if you are trying to create a landing page or some type of interface or dashboard, or you want some kind of feedback on a feature, you can follow this structure to help you be able to have the best response out of Claude's current 4.5 system prompt, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to actually throw this into Claude now so I can show you what this looks like, right? So let's just copy and paste that in. I'm going to let Claude go and do its thing. While I'm here, I don't want to be chatting, but I just want you to see, we're going to let Claude work, let Claude do its thing. Let's open up its thinking so you can see its thought process. And it's already doing it. If you notice, it's already now popped out the artifact because it knows that it's automatically going to be over, 1,000 lines potentially. So it's automatically creating the artifact for us and let us go. We can start to see how it's thinking about the problem. And you can see here, it's going to be React. It's going to be using Tailwind. And what is it that I'm actually asking Claude to do here? So I said, create for me a landing page for a design system consultant that would make someone stop and scroll and say, whoa. So I'm doing this because I know the wow factor is the default inside of it. So I'm just re-emphasizing that default wow factor piece. I want it to stand out. Styles, luxury, modern, elegant. I've given it some ideas of like colors that you can use. It can use because I can go to Tailwind's website, see how Tailwind describes colors. Boom, you can just throw those actual Tailwind color codes inside of here. Typography, large, expressive. Use sans serif, for example. Smooth hover states, glass morphic as much as possible, generous white space. Just that good design techniques we're throwing in here. Hero with dual call to actions, right? Because I know what I want it to do. the wow factor, because we know that the wow factor is a massive part of the system prompt. Make it feel like 2025, not 2020. Would this get featured on awards.com, right? Would this make Stripe design feel expensive? What makes Stripe's design feel expensive? Think about that. What gives Linear its premium software feel? This landing page demonstrate design system mastery through its own execution, perfect component consistency, flawless system, flawless spacing system, systematic use of color and typography. So I trained up Claude on its own system prompt, which sounds a bit weird, but what I'm saying is I asked Claude to create me the perfect structure whenever I'm trying to, as a designer, speak to Claude about what I get, what I want. And then Claude, plus I added some more to this, gave me this basic prompt structure that can be used. This is the example. So now let's jump into Claude and let's see what it's spat out for us. So you can see Glassmorphic is trying to get to that. You've got this kind of like, I don't know if you guys can see it via share screen, but in the back, my mouse has a kind of faded ball that's moving with my mouse inside of Claude. When you scroll down, we've got our buttons here. The hover states aren't really there the best, but you can already start to see that it's using that kind of, here's like a hover state going on here. And if you don't basically try and push the design a bit further, like as much as I personally wouldn't just use this out of the box, right here, I can now download this TSX file, bring it into Cursor, and I can take this even further as well, right? So you've got like I think this looks quite decent, like, you know, just coming out of Claude straight in chat from one prompt. This is just one prompt that we've used. And then we can then even go further on like copywriting to make it more engaging, etc. So you can see here that this is a good start for us to work with. And this is what happens when you're just leveraging Claude. And then here's one that I built earlier. Forgive the lines because I had to screenshot these. But build design systems that actually scale. And you can see here how it's kind of just almost as close. Like it's not the same thing. So you can see here in this expertise section that it's now got colored icons, where initially it had these kind of same color icons here with the blue and the purple background. But the structure and everything is the same structure. It's got a footer on this one, but whereas on this one, it doesn't really have a footer. It's got a call to action section. But yeah, I don't really care. It doesn't need all of that. The point I'm making, guys, is like you can do quite a lot here. And this is just a system prompt. If you're creating landing pages, my next video, I'll do one on how to create for applications. But I just really wanted to walk you through this so that you can see specifically how you can leverage this system prompt. And so really, if you found this super valuable and you want to go through even further, what I've done is I've put together a toolkit to help you become a growth designer. So growth designer is really that person that's really focused inside the company on how to help it grow and scale using product design techniques. And I've put together this document where we're going to go through things like what specifically is a growth designer, the growth design skills checklist. You're going to go through that. We're going to go through things like your toolkit, what tools are actually good, how you can be leveraging things like Figma, ChatGPT. I specifically use ChatGPT for strategy. So think of this like I'm in the discovery, I've recorded a meeting, for example, I'm taking that, building out a PRD, etc. I'm using Claude for more ideation, helping me get things off the ground and prototyping. Things like Lovable as well, how we're using tools like Lovable and how we can get really high quality designs simply by leveraging AI to take things to that next level. So I'm still using Webflow as my tool of choice. I see so many designers using Framer. I have no problem with it, but because I build much bigger sites, I personally prefer Webflow. And then how you can have a proper toolkit that works for you, giving you a 90-day action plan. So if you definitely want your version of this growth designers toolkit, just let me know. Check it out, the description box below. I'll also give you a copy of this diagram so you can have a look and you can walk through it yourself and check it out. I'll put that in the description box below. But guys, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Leif Wallace, and I hope that you had a great time watching this video today. Look after yourself and look after your families. Take care, and bye-bye.